we can always edit stuff, so we
Yeah,
can totally say stupid stuff, and
cool.
it'll be as if we never said it.
Perfect.
Yeah. Hey everyone, this is episode 4 or 5 of the day. I'm here with Frank Bach for, oh my God, I don't even know how to pronounce your last name. I'm just guessing here. It's
Nice.
about,
Nailed it. You nailed it.
all right, all right. So it's like the classic musician. So I
Exactly.
got it right.
Composer. Yep.
Yeah, composer. You're right. Yeah, you are a musician actually. Keep forgetting that.
I am a musician, yeah, and I was let's see, I brought this guy out into the garage today. So I've been
Yeah,
doing my design reviews and kind of riffing on the guitar a little bit, doing double duty.
yeah,
Like to
that's
stay busy.
awesome. Yeah. I'm with Frank Bach today, and he's got like a really, really interesting career and also side gigs and hobbies and everything. So I'm super excited to talk with you. We raised about $4 or $5,000 so far in the last 3 days, and we're gonna try to see if we can get a little bit more out of this.
It's huge.
Yeah, we're about, let me see, 78% or something for the target for Tiffany. uh, no, 77. We still have 77%, but we just hit $20,000. So this is awesome. I want to thank everyone who's donated. We were just talking with Sarah Tajima and Tom Takigayama right beforehand, and that's a big milestone for us, 20K. So Frank, I love your background. You're currently working at Instagram right now. Can you
Yep.
tell us a bit about how you got here and also what you're currently working on?
Yeah, for sure. I interviewed at Meta, formerly Facebook, 3 times in my life. The first time was 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And I terribly embarrassed myself. It's when I realized I needed to learn a lot more. I didn't make it past the first screener. And it actually sent me into this rabbit hole of discovering the world of like product and product design. Um, so I kind of challenged myself to keep trying and not give up. And third time was a charm. Finally got there. And one of the interesting things, I was on a pretty public job hunt. I shared a lot on social media about this. I was part of a huge layoff at my last job at Headspace, and getting on at Instagram. Um, I originally landed on a creators team working on features for creators or pro accounts, and I'm now on a growth team after about a year on creators. But how I got on to the creators team was really neat, I think, and a testament to like doing stuff outside of your job, because I think some of my creator kind of like hobbies and interests that I do outside of work really told a good story that I have felt sort of creator pain points. I understand what they go through every day. I am one. I use social media to propel my projects and my career and things. So it made for some really easy conversations, instead of like if I compare it to other interviews I was having, maybe at like a fintech company, or like, sure, I have some interest in finance, but I'm not by any means an expert trader or anything like that. So just being able to speak to that through personal experience, I think made a really big difference and helped me land the job. But yeah, eventually, you know, big companies move things around and ended up on a growth team, which is also kind of one of my comfort zones. But yeah, just trying to get more people onto the platform, onto Instagram, working in, all over the world, connecting with other services and seeing how we can, how we can keep that momentum going.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I feel like you're selling yourself short here. That, I mean, you definitely have an amazing background in social media and content creation, but it feels like, your third time applying is also an elevation of your skill set and your
Exactly.
experience to
Yeah,
get to this point. What do you
yeah.
think was like the biggest difference that helped you in recent years to get to a point where you can get into Meta and Instagram?
Yeah. In recent years, I think between the second and third time applying, my portfolio didn't change very much. I think it was mostly the way I talked about the work. First or the second time, it was like basically a show and tell of here's what I worked on, here's what the screens look like, here's what the flows look like, and here's what we shipped. And kind of, like it all looked really good and functionally like nice prototypes and stuff like that. But I think just being able to connect more to what was the like how did you vouch for the user need in that moment? How did you fight for kind of what was the right user experience? What were some of the business goals and challenges that you faced along the way? How do you manage like stakeholder expectations? How did you like maybe you were a designer on the team, but did your role on that project like change over the span of the project? And how did you work with others? I don't know, conflict resolution, all that stuff. So I made sure to like pepper in to the story all the all the details basically of how it really went down. And I think there's no, we all talk about process and there's no perfect process. And I think a good senior designer knows when to shift gears and try something else or, take on a different process. And yeah, bringing in some of the data, some of the user insights, and making sure that I'm connecting all of my decisions to things that are, kind of validated along the way and really telling that story. So, as cliche as it sounds, it really was the storytelling. That was the big game changer.
I mean, that's huge. And, on that point, I definitely want to take a step back because I feel like I haven't really followed you that much in social media, mostly due to the fact that we're on different platforms. Like I'm mostly on LinkedIn. It seems like you're mostly on Twitter or X.
Yeah.
But I eventually discovered you when we both were in the same Slack channel that you and Tommy had started, and I started to see more of your personalities, your
Yeah.
background projects. You have your own band, you do concert merchandise stuff for them, and you have your own shop where you sell, or you're helping creators monetize their offerings through
Yep.
merchandising. And you're just doing all these really cool side gigs. You have your own courses. That's actually the first time I realized, hey, you can actually make money by selling your the experience that you've
Yeah.
collected in your jobs and
Yeah.
helping other people succeed. So all this is super cool. Like how does this all kind of fold into your current career? Because I feel like
Yeah.
even though they seem a little bit separate, I still feel that they
Yeah.
all you know helped solidify the story that you have as not just a product designer, but like a real person with a lot of creativity behind it.
Definitely. That's a question I ask myself a lot. I try to think of it a lot. I've discovered this map one time of like basically it was Walt Disney's vision for what all the different things that Disney would do as a company. It was sort of like you have like the Disney magic at the center, and then you have like theme parks here, movies here, characters and animation here, and like the animation and the characters feed into the movies, feed into the theme park, feed into like licensing and music and it like performance, cruise ships, like the kind of as long as there's some connective tissue from one to the other, it all just like kind of makes sense and it like all the pieces help all the other pieces and that's whether by a little bit by strategy and sometimes by accident I'm trying to make all the pieces connect better but it always starts with just genuine interest and I think it also starts with like with curiosity and just enjoying working with people on things. Like I'm fine working on things on my own, but I really love collaborating with other creative people who can kind of get me out of my comfort zone and like beyond the kind of creative block or writer's block that I get into sometimes. And that part's really like that gives back a lot to me and keeps things really fresh and enjoyable. Oh, I think you're muted.
This is six times so far in the last 3 days. I've been counting it. I'm like, I'm gonna donate X amount, multiply it by how many times I forget to unmute myself. So this is sixth time. But
Oh,
I feel like you've this is part of the reason why you started the Slack channel almost because you're finding other similar minds to kind of feed
yeah,
off each other and to create this environment. I feel like Walt Disney though views the the Disney company, the Walt Disney Company,
yeah,
as a business. It's a very strategic growth for them based on whatever material I've seen on TV and on his
yeah.
background and his life. Do you see it the same way? Like you're your own business, your person, your brand is a business, or is it more of like a
Yeah,
personal creativity growth thing?
bit of both, I think, and I think there's a philanthropic side to all of it. I think any good business does more than just, make money and profit. I think there's a aspect of giving back. There's a community piece. There's ways you engage with your audience and people. So I do. Um, yeah, I guess it's multifaceted, but definitely at the core of it is me and what I kind of have to offer. And some of those things can be monetized. Some of those things can't. Some of those things not yet. Sometimes just through genuine interest, I will try stuff and then figure something out years down the line where, oh wow, I didn't real like this could be monetized. So maybe we'll try that. Or maybe this monetized thing could be given away for free. So I try to balance that, but at the core is really just me.
What's something that you're really excited about and you're really interested in, but you haven't done it because you haven't found a way to monetize it, or you don't really see it as a monetization opportunity?
I have this dumb dream of opening a coffee shop, and like all everything I know tells me I should never do it. Um, yeah, that seems really cool, but I value being able to have mobility and not be stuck in one place for long periods of time. Even though I'm usually at home, but if I ran a coffee shop, I'd probably have to be there quite a bit, kind of running that business. So until someone can tell me how I can do that in a hands-off way, maybe I'll just invest in one. But I do like that idea. That's something that keeps coming back. And um, I mean, being a musician, writing music, it's first off creative, but it has to be somewhat monetizable for it to be something you can do long term, especially if you're going out on the road and playing live. Still figuring out how to monetize that one better. But I think what's really funny is the stuff I love doing the most is the toughest to monetize, like music.
Yeah.
And then the stuff that I can monetize really well, like teaching product design stuff, is sometimes what I'm kind of least interested in making because I've just done it so much, and it feels like I'm just repeating myself.
What's the unique value proposition of your coffee shop? Because I feel like everybody who wants to start a
Yeah,
coffee shop or a plant shop or farm has like a little twist to it.
yeah. I don't know yet, but there's a few ideas I've had. It's good. I like that you mentioned plant shop because I think like a plant shop that has coffee would be cool, but I think that's been done a bunch.
Yeah.
Uh, I like the idea in business of like they call it like a loss leader, which is like maybe it's like something else that offers coffee, and the coffee doesn't make any money at all. It just gets people in the door. So there's maybe some other offering. Um, not reinventing the wheel. Co-working space slash coffee
Yeah.
shop could work, and then that would be a way that I could continue to do my sort of design day job from the co-working side while still, I don't know, I'm kind of, that's my toxic trait, is thinking that I could pull it off, much to my wife's dismay. And she's always reminding me that some of my ideas are crazy, but they're just ideas until they're not.
So the coffee would be the Costco hot dog of your
Yeah, exactly,
business.
exactly.
Yeah.
And people keep telling me like, well, coffee loses money all the time, and it's hard to monetize. And I'm like, yeah, I understand that, but I think it could still work. Um, yeah,
So let's talk about the stuff that maybe you're a little bit less passionate about, but that's making you more money,
yeah, yeah.
because that's what people are here for.
Sorry, it's not that I'm not passionate. It's just that it's something I've done a lot of, and I think like any creative person, we're always trying to branch out into other facets.
Yeah. But you have a great course on
Thanks.
creating leadership or influence
Yeah,
as I guess as an IC more than a manager, right?
yeah,
And like, how did that course come about, and
yeah,
how
yeah.
has that?
I have a pretty long history of basically doing like design conferences and events as a keynote speaker. And I, in a feels like a past life. I used to teach graphic design in a college environment. So these two things are kind of connected. And at one point, this woman, Julie Stanescu. She runs Rethink. They're an organization out of San Francisco,
Yeah.
and she asked me if I'd be interested in doing a course of some kind. And I was kind of hesitant because I had an okay experience teaching college, but I didn't like love it. It was a lot of work, and there's a lot of stuff beyond just the classroom aspect that you have. It takes a lot of time to do the other stuff. I was open to it, and she helped me quite a bit in like structuring it. And that was kind of the thing was, sure, I will provide all the knowledge I have, and I'll show up for an hour and a half or 2 hours every couple of weeks and do the thing. But I really need help in the structuring and the marketing of it all. So she really was like my right hand person in driving that whole thing, and I was essentially, I don't know what you would call sort of the talent, I guess. And I don't think I could have done it on my own. I think that I was like really hesitating funny enough, it's a course on leadership and confidence, but I was not super confident going into it until we sold out a few of them during the pandemic. And we were easily having like 40, 50 signups for each cohort. And that kind of built that muscle up a little of like, wait, maybe we have something here that is, repeatable, scalable. And anytime I'm finding myself between jobs or I want to take a break or something, I know I can start that engine back up and have something keep me busy between things, which is really, really comforting.
So I noticed you're not a Maven. I feel like a lot of the content creators who have courses have migrated onto that platform for a variety of reasons, but I'm kind of curious your decision
Yeah,
making behind that.
honestly, I've just kind of put most of it on pause for the last year and a half. But I think when I spark that up again, I think Maven will be the go-to. From what I've seen, it seems to be the top one, and they have a pretty good percentage that they take kind of what they. I think it feels fair what
Yeah.
they're taking. Yeah,
Yeah. I would say so. I've
yeah,
seen worse. I've
yeah.
seen a
So
lot worse.
I've been doing intro.co.
Yeah.
That's been neat, having a few of these like 15 or 30-minute phone calls one on one with people. I always feel a little bit bad or guilty charging a premium for my time because I'm totally a people pleaser and love to share. But yeah, people value the time and the opinion. So happy to keep doing that.
What's a common question they typically bring to you?
A lot of people are just looking. They're usually looking for something in their current job that kind of they're not getting. Maybe they've been misplaced in terms of like they they want to work on core product, kind of like end to end user experiences, but they ended up on a growth team, or they're on, or they're in a startup that is trying to find product market fit, but they want to do something that's not that. And I typically am trying to guide them to um, kind of the sad news that they probably need to go find another job because they're going to be waiting around a long time in this company to find the thing that they're looking for.
So your background, I mean, your career has trajectory has just been like a rocket in many ways.
Thank you.
You've gone from Headspace to Instagram. You're working on
Yep.
things that you're deeply passionate about
Mhm.
when it comes to content creation, and
Mhm.
now you're on growth. Like,
Yep.
what are some of the? I mean, I'm sure you've probably faced quite a few challenges, but that's like kind of invisible to folks outside of your
Right.
tight circle. Can you kind of
Yeah.
talk a bit about some of these more challenging moments, like layoffs or
Yeah.
moments when you've come to your boss or your manager and you're like, I would like this, and they're just like, no, you ain't ready.
Yeah. Yeah. I've always been. Um, I've been promoted a few times. At Headspace, I was able to go from like mid level to principal level designer. The jump from mid to senior kind of happened naturally, and not a lot changed in terms of my day to day. It almost felt like an honorary title. But the jump from senior to principal, that title didn't really exist at the company. So I had to work really hard to, one, like sort of help the team invent the title and the description and what it meant to be a principal level designer, and then kind of work towards how to get myself there. And when I joined Headspace, they were freshly funded Series B, uh, some 30-40 million dollars of money coming in. So they were throwing money and titles and kind of whatever you wanted. It was the heyday of what we called the Silicon Beach here in LA, where all the big companies were coming in and VCs were showing up everywhere. And so it was a great time to kind of ask for what you wanted. But then things started to slow down, and you can imagine um, timing your timing your demand with the moment that a company is going through. I learned that was, you could be kind of strategic about that. And sometimes it's not about you, it is about the moment and the timing. Um, so yeah, I think being strategic about that is good. Um, yeah, being through some layoffs, tough realizations that as much as you like loved the company and the team and the mission, um, sometimes companies get so big that you end up being a number on a spreadsheet, and that it's not personal, even though it feels personal and it really hurts. You put your heart and soul into it. Um, that's definitely a challenging moment I've been through. I mean, there's also been moments. I mean, I talked about the advice I've given people of the finding what you need and what you want, and trying to connect that to the job that you're in. Um, sometimes that's really hard to connect those two things. And there's a lot of designers working on you know B2B sales dashboards and things like that. I don't meet a lot of them who are super passionate about it, but it is a good way to pay the bills. So I don't judge it, and I've definitely been there myself. But I think it's good to acknowledge that personally, like you talked about career trajectory, what I know about myself is I get really excited about consumer brands that I can talk to people who aren't designers about. So, my history, Instagram, Headspace, Red Bull, these are all like kind of beloved consumer brands. And it's done me a lot of, or it's given me a lot of kind of positive career trajectory just being associated to those things.
For sure. And you mentioned that you were promoted to the principal level
Yeah.
at Headspace.
Yeah.
And again, I feel like you're selling yourself short by saying, they Silicon Beach, they had like a lot of money to kind of throw at these titles and everything. But like, what was the process like to get that level?
It was a pretty awkward performance review conversation with my manager at the time, where I hyped myself up to be promoted and pointed to a lot of things that I believed um, kind of earned me that, only to be met with the conversation of, sorry, Frank, it's not, this is not the year for that for you. It's a bit of a tough pill to swallow, because um, it's something I've been wanting. And I think I learned the art of kind of seeding the idea early on, to let people know kind of what you're looking for over the next 6 to 12 months, and then working towards that. And also making it something you bring up, like at maybe every couple of one-on-one meetings that you have, that you are working towards this and you're looking for guidance on how to get there, and to be supported by your manager, which I think is what like any good manager would do. And to also be truthful with you, like if it's still not a thing that could happen, or they don't think you're ready, to tell you that hard truth. What stung the most was that even after we kind of defined the role and the title and what it all meant to be principal level, um, the company was going through a merger, and another designer, who will go unnamed, joined the company as a principal level designer, as the first one,
Oh,
uh,
I know who.
which kind of killed me, because I was like, damn, I put all this work in to define it and make it all make sense, and I'm struggling to get promoted to it, and then somebody just kind of walked in. And that was just my perception of it at the time.
Yeah.
I was a little bummed and hurt, but good lesson. And working on the meditation app for so long, um, being able to disconnect and let go um, of those kind of tough feelings sometimes. I think that was also pretty helpful. But yeah, it's again, you don't from the outside you see all the highlights, but you don't ever know what someone is going through in their career, even though it looks uh,
Shiny.
shiny and impressive.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's so funny. Like I knew we were talking about like, oh, that explains so much. But uh
yeah,
but like for you, what was your definition of like I'm ready for a
yeah.
principal level role? Like what's the difference between say a principal or a staff or a lead level role? Because that's always been hard to define for a lot of organizations.
Right. I think it's the ability to impact like beyond just your team that you've been staffed to. Like um, if you're on like an activation team or a monetization team, like can you have impact on a broader level, like on more like the growth level where you're impacting 4 or 5 different teams. Um, I think there's also a lot of historical knowledge you can get there through just long-term experience and knowing the product inside and out better than anybody. Um, being able to rally around um, a cause or a feature or something that you really believe needs to happen and launching it successfully, I think is a good way to prove that. Rather than like your manager or your director kind of asking you to do something, being the person who bubbles up that information and highlights the opportunity. Um, I see staff and principal kind of the same. I don't know if they're always interchangeable, but in my mind they are. I think there's a mentorship aspect as well. Like, are you somebody who's able to guide and coach people on the team, help them level up as well? Because it's not always about you; it's about the team and elevating everybody's skills. And then I think there's a little bit of an X factor. Like we all bring something unique to the table, and for me, I think it's my experiences with working on bigger brands where I can connect the brand and the product in a meaningful way. Um, and I think that comes through in like visual design and interaction design and, thinking more holistically about what the consumer sees and not just like what the new user onboarding flow is. Like what is the broader perception of the brand and its values. And yeah, I think that was like my kind of my secret sauce. But I've also seen people come in as principal level designers who are like amazing at design systems or they're experts in growth or stuff like that. So I think there's a lot of different flavors of principal. It might be one of the more kind of dynamic titles out there. Kind of means something different to every company.
Yeah, I agree. And I feel like, on the topic of dynamic terminologies that have different meanings for different people, what are your thoughts around craft? Because it
Yeah.
feels like in the recent years, at
Hmm.
least the last 2 years, craft has been really focused on or elevated in
Hmm.
terms of why certain designers are being hired or why they're being promoted.
Yeah.
Whereas in years past, craft wasn't as talked about, it feels like.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's a time and place for it. And it's really depending on the company, its brand, its values, what its consumer expects of you. Um, working on Headspace. That was one of their differentiators was that it was highly kind of delightful, animated. We were able to talk about um, all aspects of the human condition through mindfulness and meditation. Things that were tough to talk about, like grief, relationships, things that were lighthearted as well. Courses on creativity and that kind of thing. But we were able to do it in a way that it had not been done before. We didn't look um, like the self help section at Barnes and Noble. We had a really cool brand that spoke to people and was resonant with younger people as well. So that I think that's what craft looked like at a company like Headspace, and then um, at a company like Instagram, what does craft look like? Well, the scale and speed and size of the team. I think a lot of the craft happens kind of on the design system side of things, but um, our the kind of the mo at Instagram is to be able to test and validate things really quickly, but um, keeping that bar for craft high. So it's a little bit different there. And I've consulted and had some contract jobs for other startups that didn't value craft as much. One of them is a company called Going, and they used to be called Scott's Cheap Flights. And what's kind of amazing, do you know them?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Scott's Cheap Flights, it's in the name. Like it was kind of meant to feel cheap. Like it was kind of part of the brand was like,
Yeah.
it's this like cheap kind of like flight deals, like, bargain bin flights to Paris for $200, like, things nobody knows about, almost had like a Craigslist vibe about it.
Yeah.
So I think it's a fun balance. And sometimes, especially when I'm doing music related stuff, um, I try to like unlearn all the things that I know make good design and try to make things that are more artistic and emotive, and like not worrying so much about like white space and perfect typography. I guess it's a little bit um, like some things I've learned from people like David Carson, um, rather than like the Massimo Vignelli way of doing things. But yeah, I think it's an interesting spectrum of like low craft, high craft, lowbrow, highbrow, and playing around with these things.
That's so interesting. Your definition of craft is changed by which
Yeah.
company you're working at.
Oh
And
yeah.
you're kind of thinking about it in terms of what that company values
Yeah.
and how they might promote within or how they reward
Yeah.
designers based on the kind of work that they're doing. So
Yeah.
when you say like Instagram is trying to like test out things and like
Mhm.
um, prototyping, perhaps, it feels like that's just growth design, isn't it? Like, are you saying that all their teams are basically growth teams in some ways?
You could say that. I think the Instagram is so big and we're able to validate things so quickly, um, that that is kind of the way things move through the company is through kind of iterative changes. Um, so yeah, you could that's one way of looking at it for sure. Um, I've seen some teams be more craft and like narrative storytelling focused, and then others be a little bit more, um, what would you say? I guess more iterative. But yeah, yes and no.
Where does strategy sit in that kind of environment or culture?
Yeah. I think largely between product management and product design. Like especially the higher level kind of product designer. I think for PMs, I think it's table stakes, and then the higher level, like staff principal level product designer. I think that expectation is there that you have a strong sense of strategy and you're able to weigh in that way. But again, all the teams are goaling after different things. So what strategy might look like for a growth team versus, I don't know, a privacy team or something like that would be kind of different. But yeah, I think nothing in my experience in a big tech environment, um, nothing happens by accident, and all of it has been very thought through, tested, validated, kind of before it sees the light of day.
You mentioned strategy and growth. I've always been a little bit confused by that terminology because it just seems almost as if they're opposite of each other. And I don't mean like strategy as in how do you do growth design in a
Yeah,
strategic way, like trying to be more efficient or more effective, but like
right.
product strategy.
Hmm.
Like, how does that really fit in together? Is it possible, or am I just imagining it the wrong way?
I think it's a good question. Um, I mean, it all depends on the business and the product and how does it grow and what are the needs for growth in the moment. Is it? are the levers of growth for the company? Are they feature based? Are they content based? Are they both? Do you just need more people on the platform? How do you monetize? Like Headspace is a subscription business with the annual and monthly fee, whereas an Instagram is largely driven by like ad revenue. And so both those companies, growth looks and feels a little differently. Um, Also, you look at maybe a company like Netflix, growth is getting more people to the platform. And so um, the strategy for something like a streaming platform might be it might be mostly content driven, where like I still remember the first series I watched on Netflix that where I decided to sign up and pay for it. So that was like the hook that got me in. And I think it's so different depending on the company. But if you've been through these a few times, I think um, you can jump into an unfamiliar scenario and kind of work your way through it pretty quickly. Of like, how do we get from A to B to C based on what is kind of what's working and what's not working. Um, I've felt it in my side projects, things like any of my courses I do. I have a pretty strong sense of how to get people to sign up to them, not just through like the landing page, but how do you get people to the landing page? And that means cultivating a social media presence over long periods of time where you're building trust. I know that sounds kind of robotic. I truly enjoy it and I love social media and it's given me a lot back in my life. And like, I know for some people they choose to, kind of not live on the internet, but it's like, it's a very comfortable place I like. So it's very easy for me. Um, and I think, yeah, once I started understanding funnels and conversion, which took a minute, honestly, I remember being so confused, hearing people talk about the different stages of a funnel, just being like, what are you guys even talking about? But once that clicked, it's like that it was game over. Now I feel like I can navigate that pretty seamlessly in whatever environment I'm in.
So, on the topic of your courses,
Yeah.
I know one of the key things that you're teaching is confidence,
Yeah.
and that's something that's so elusive to a lot of designers
Mm.
because it feels kind of like a chicken or egg kind of situation where you need to have done something first to kind of exude that type of confidence.
Mhm.
And it's hard to do it without confidence to begin with.
Yeah.
And I haven't really seen any good frameworks for teaching that. Like, what is your secret?
For confidence.
Yeah, like I don't have the time and the money to take your course right now,
Yeah.
and you're not even offering it right now. But like, if I need to up my confidence, like I see it, I know that I'm not doing well in my presentations in terms of how I come across to stakeholders, my partners, and my coworkers, and to interviewers. I want to elevate this. How do I do it?
I think there's a lot of aspects to this. I think we all have our own experiences and varying degrees of confidence we come into life and into the workplace with. One thing I like to remind myself is there's a lot of people out there with very high confidence who have no who maybe shouldn't have that much confidence. So I think just acknowledging that people are doing it, and um, I think like pointing to your wins, reflection, self awareness, looking back at the various things that you've been successful at in your life and things that people have complimented you on that you are good at, reminding yourself that, yeah, you have something special to offer. It's really easy to play the comparison game, especially in companies with, a lot of designers. I acknowledge that I'm never going to be the best designer, the best motion graphics person, the best design systems person. Like I can't do it all. So I have to pick just a few things to be really good at. And, um, kind of like comparison is the thief of joy. But yeah, I think also like seeking feedback. You mentioned how you're perceived by your peers and things like that. Even though it is not that fun to receive the feedback when it's not great, it will make you better. And then hopefully you're consistently hearing positive feedback. So I think that helps helps the confidence. There have been moments in the past where um, I've had like stage fright or, afraid to speak in front of people, things like that. But the more you do it, the more exposure you get, the easier it becomes. And now I feel like very confident that I could walk in front of a room and talk about a few things off the cuff and, kind of be coherent enough to tell a good story. So in those ways, I can see that, well, I have really grown my confidence in that way. And I mean, some people outside of our industry really recommend these things like Toastmasters. If you've heard of that, like the kind of like
Yeah.
how to frame a story and speak in front of groups. That's one way. Um, I think an exercise I've done is take screenshots and notes of all the positive and good things that happen on a day to day basis or on a weekly basis, and I go and look back at those quite a bit, kind of remind myself, okay, cool. Like, and it helps too when you're in an environment that does performance reviews where you have to look back on the year and how things went and what your wins were and what your successes were. You can look back at all those things, and I think it does help kind of build the confidence over the years.
It feels like things are changing so much right now, though. Like
Yeah,
with AI, with just all
sure.
the tooling that are coming out when it comes to helping you to design or build things
Right.
faster or better.
Mhm.
And I know at Meta or Instagram is probably pretty competitive. Like you're constantly
Right.
looking at ways to improve your skill set. Like what are you seeing right now in terms of the market?
Mm.
And where do you think you're going to be focused on for the next 6 to 12 months so that you're competitive?
Right. Yeah, and everyone's so talented. Nobody gets past that, like the bar of being a designer at a company like that without having a pretty solid um, level of design. Um, I mean, we're still using many of the tools that you see that are pretty like widely adopted in the industry. We have some of our own internal prototyping tools like origami that are used quite often. That's very helpful because we can plug in to the API and actually get live real content. So you're not just making stuff up in Figma, or designing for like ideal states. I always enjoy designing feeds and things and getting content that is not beautiful. Just like memes and whatever people post looks very different than what a designer would kind of make a grid look like or something like that. Um, what else? We have a pretty tight relationship with user research. That's one thing that um, I've not seen a company this well staffed in user research before. I think at Headspace we had a pretty small UXR team, and it was usually like kind of under resourced, and we sometimes designers would have to do their own research, which I think we're able to lean on them more in this new job, which is great because you can really see the kind of the circle or the flywheel happening of like an idea, insight, data, execution, kind of how it goes and how we build stuff. Um, AI tools are there. I mean, we use um, like LLM type things quite often. I use it a lot um, for myself just to get like get the ball rolling on an idea. Um, this will sound funny, but I have sometimes taken things my product manager has said or typed up, and I've thrown it at the chat bot and asked it, "What does this mean?" Or like, "Can you explain this PM speak to me in plain English?" And usually that's pretty helpful, and it saves everybody time, I think. Um, Yeah, for me, it's been a really great brainstorm buddy, more than anything else. I'm not really using it for like naming layers or that kind of thing.
Do you see yourself having to pick up new skills that are
I think
quite different than in the past?
honestly, I think in a company this size, the toughest skills are the soft skills. There's so many talented designers. There's way more ideas than you can execute on. There's no shortage of ideas or people who want to build stuff, who can build stuff. It's about selling internally the idea and validating it and getting buy-in. As you know, it might sound like some people's worst nightmare, but it's really a unique challenge, more than any other place I've seen, where like to get an idea on the roadmap is pretty tough to do.
So it sounds like it's pretty competitive there.
Yeah,
And I think people generally know who's doing really well compared to the rest of the team.
sure.
What do you think is separating the person who's doing extremely well? Like, what are they doing differently? What kind of skill set they have that is just elevating them past the others?
I think ability to show your work often, and have like even like unfinished work internally, like kind of like having very like little ego goes a long way because you're able to solicit feedback pretty quickly, and that, you know, getting your engineers and your PMs excited about what you want to do, I think is a good way to be successful in that kind of environment. I think there's a lot of not people management in the like managerial sense, but in a company this big, you should probably be having regular conversations with your VPs, with your chief design officer, you know, with people in high up leadership positions, because there's so many layers between them and you that if you're not being proactive in that, they may not even know you exist. The company has thousands of designers. So what separates me from the others? And sometimes it is, you know, kind of getting out in front of people, turning your camera on, speaking up, you know, having a voice. That makes a huge difference.
So, what is separating you from the other designers? Like, I have some ideas from
Sure.
your past experiences, but I definitely want to, we haven't spoken in a while, so I wonder if that's changed a bit.
I think personal brand outside of work was a good starting point in helping me get the job, and then focusing on like what am I known for internally, that may not come across on social media, but the things I'm really good at in a, I guess in a more like closed environment. Um, I've put more effort on kind of the internal personal brand than the external personal brand, this past year and a half, which I think is a smart move for people who kind of oscillate between, um, you know, having an online presence and doing all this other stuff on top of their career, is like figuring out the right moments to like put your foot on the gas pedal. So I think that has helped. Also, um, not being not being afraid to ask the dumb questions. You know, knowing that I don't know everything. I'm not gonna know everything, but it's on me to ask the questions. And if, you know, if I feel dumb for 5 seconds, that's okay. I'll get to the bottom of what, you know, of a certain of whatever it is I'm thinking about. Um, and I also think being personable helps. I always try. You're meeting so many people, it's hard to remember the names, the faces, the, you know, what you know them from, what city they even live in, what teams they're on. I really try to lead with, uh, you know, lead with empathy and like human conversations, and like, you know, how, like find out how things are going for them that day or that week, and kind of be a little bit more personable and less transactional, because it is in such a like high performance company, it could be easy to, um, yeah, I guess just to make it really transactional. Like I'll give you what you need, you give me what I need, and we'll both kind of go on our separate ways, and that's it.
I definitely noticed that you focus more on your internal brand versus your external brand for the past
have to,
year.
have to, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
And
I think we all noticed it.
it's
But
a distinct shift. Yeah. I mean, at Headspace, we used to have 4 day weeks. So I would do pretty much every Friday or every second Friday, I could focus on personal stuff and just tinker around on my computer and have fun, try random things. But yeah, now it's a little more intense.
yeah, I can imagine that. So we're almost at time right now, and my dog's going nuts.
All good.
But
All good.
I want to ask, this is a terrible question, but
Yep.
I think some people would appreciate hearing this. Let's say well, I think a lot of designers look up to you, what you've done in your career, and what kind of designer you are, the kind of work that you're doing. And let's say there's another senior designer out there who is kind of pretty average across the board.
Yeah.
What should they be doing to become more like you? Like, what's the first step they can take?
Yeah. I think they should collect some kind of like 360 feedback on various things, like what really get to the bottom of how they are perceived in the workplace or with the people they work with, and use that as the starting point of like where to level up. And for some people, it might be visual design. For some people, it might be people skills, or maybe it's the more like UXy side of things, like wireframes and flows, etc. It's going to be different for everybody for sure, um, but making sure that you find some ways to level up on all those things that you're maybe a little bit weaker on. Um, I think that that would go a long way for people. But also, with all that said, like I mentioned earlier, it's really hard to be great at everything. So maybe pick those three things you want to be really great at, and
Well,
try to be known for that within your workplace.
well, I guess what I'm really asking is, what are you really, really great at, and what can they do to
What am I
get
great at?
closer to what you're really great at? The
Yeah,
one or two things that
right.
separates you from the vast majority of other designers out there.
Um, I think digging, like, not just getting into the competitive landscape of kind of the industry you're in, but also the like adjacent kind of competitive landscape. I think being curious to see what else is going on in our industry. So for me, it's like not just looking at social media products, but kind of everything else. I think you can learn a lot by how what people are doing there. I've often done um, app kind of teardowns or walkthroughs where I will like download an app and screen record myself going through the whole flow. And then I'm able to connect certain tactics that they're using in their product and adapt it to what we're doing, or find whatever thing I'm working on, figure out what's the unique way we can do something similar. So yeah, seeking inspiration from kind of unexpected places. I think like having a really good, maybe it's because I started in graphic design, like typography and hierarchy and like color goes a long way. And I do think that's a little bit missing with the latest few batches of product designers I've seen in the industry. Is like a lot of them, their first jobs are as like product or UX designers, where people in my age range started in marketing and advertising, and we had to design magazine layouts and billboards and advertisements and things like that. So that taught me a lot about typography. And growing up in Canada, anything I designed, being a bilingual country, had to be in French and English. So I had many any brand I was working on had to work in both languages. So how do you squeeze that much text onto one sheet of paper? That makes designing for digital stuff feel pretty easy.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much, Frank.
Yeah,
We're at time right now, and I've learned so much. I hope other folks who are listening, who will be listening to this, are going to learn just as much. Frank, thank you so much. I know, you're an LA native, and times are not great right now. So the fact that you're taking an hour aside to help with this initiative is deeply appreciated. So thank you, Frank.
I hope it helps. Thank you for your time as well. I know you've put in a lot more than just this hour. I think you're on 4 or 5 plus hours now. So
Yeah,
appreciate
it's been fun. It's been fun. I love reconnecting with folks and just like seeing what they're up to, and what they're
it.
doing well and all
Totally.
that. It's awesome. But I hope you have a wonderful weekend and you get to spend more time with your family, and I hope you get away from all the pollution and smoke and stuff.
That's the hope. That's the
Yeah.
hope. Okay. Have a good one. See you,
You
everybody.
too. Take care.